The Baltimore Ravens finalized their roster on Tuesday, and after further review, it looks like they made the perfect moves to make the perfect roster. We talk about why, what happened, and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. And on today's show, we have a jam-packed episode. We finally got the Ravens' final 53-man roster after, of course, they made us wait for it a little bit. In fact, not even a little bit, a lot of bit to get that 53-man roster in there. But after looking over it and kind of going through the motions, there was a shocking move, but overall, a lot of moves that a lot of us predicted and honestly kind of looks like the perfect roster. So we'll talk about that. We'll also dive into the Ravens and what's ahead over these next 12, 24, 48 hours for the team. We'll try to build up their practice squad and dive into everybody who could be potentially on that. And then we'll get into potentially some veteran additions if there's any room for the Ravens to make an addition or two. I want to thank you for making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And of course, thank you out there to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. And I want to tell you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season's around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. Here with me, it is Sam Njoku of the Ravens Talk podcast and, of course, of the Locked On Ravens Squad show. And Sam, this Ravens team, man, I don't know what it is. I always put up my joke tweet every single season about how we're going to know the Ravens roster in week one when they come out of the tunnel because they just do not release this thing for hours. Yeah, I saw you said that we might have gotten it by 5 considering all the leaks we ended up getting throughout the afternoon, but about 7:45, which albeit is a little better than what they did to us last year. Well, that was like 8:30 or something.
It's progress. I'll take it. I will take the 7:45. But yes, they hold on to that sheet for dear life. I don't know why. Most of the acquisitions had already been leaked out by now. The reporters over there at Baltimore do a really good job of getting us that information. But Ravens like to wait it out, so I sweat it out. You never know. Official is not official until it is official, and now it is official. The roster is set.
Now we know it, and I will just go over it very quickly so that we have a baseline. And for those who haven't seen it in its totality, I'll tell you, Sam, it looks pretty good in my opinion. So obviously you start off with the quarterbacks. You got 2 of those. There's no Devin Leary. You don't have to worry. It's Lamar Jackson and Cooper Rush for those who were not fans of Devin Leary. You got 4 running backs, Derrick Henry, Rashid Ali, Keaton Mitchell, Justice Hill. You got Patrick Ricard as the fullback, 6 wide receivers, Zay Flowers, Rashod Bateman, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Wallace, Tez Walker, LaJohntay Wester, 3 tight ends, Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kohler, Mark Andrews, 9 offensive linemen, Tyler Linderbaum, Ben Cleveland, Corey Bullock, Joseph Noteboom, Roger Rosengarten, Carson Vincent, Andrew Voorhees, Daniel Falele, Ronnie Stanley. Actually, I want to stop there. That was the offense. Any surprises for you, Sam, on the offensive side of the ball? Maybe was the biggest surprise that John Harbaugh was telling the truth about 4 running backs? Was that the biggest one for you?
Yeah, a lot of fans were asking me, hey, do you really think he'll keep 4 running backs? I say, I'll take him in his word for now because there's a prominent role for Rashid Ali on special teams, so I'll give it to him. The only other, I won't say surprise, but the only question mark I had was whether or not they were indeed going to keep Ben Cleveland because, he's been much maligned in the doghouse for a year or so now, but he does enough to make the team. The Ravens do need a backup guard. He does serve that purpose, at least for now, while Emory Jones is indeed still mending his wounds. But we'll see what happens moving forward. But so far, no surprises. Looking airtight.
Yeah, this was exactly what I expected, and I'll pat myself on the back. I went a clean perfect on this one. There nothing I had. Were you perfect on this one too?
I was as well perfect.
Let's go. I love it. Well, then defense was the one, and we talked about this on the squad show, and I know everybody's been talking about it. Defense was the name of the game in terms of some of those iffy spots. Who could make it? Who couldn't make it? We got the word. It was 5 defensive linemen. John Jenkins did make the team alongside Nnamdi Madubuike, Aeneas Peoples, Broderick Washington, and Travis Jones. Inside linebacker-wise, they did keep 5. Roquan Smith, Trenton Simpson, Jay Cummel, Teddy Buchanan, and Jay Higgins does make the roster. Outside linebackers, same thing. You got 5. Mike Green, Kyle Van Noy, David Ajabo, Tavius Robinson, and Afe Owe. Defensive backs in that corner room, you got 6. I had 7. That was my one mistake. Nate Wiggins, Chidobe Awuzie, Jaire Alexander, TJ Tampa, Keon Martin, and Marlon Humphrey. Safeties, you had 4. And those ones pretty obvious. Kyle Hamilton, Sanusi Kane, Malaki Starks, and Ruben Lowry. Specialists, no shock there. Jordan Stout, Tyler Lupin, Nick Moore. Adisa Isaac is on injured reserve now, designated to return. You mentioned Emory Jones on the NFI list, and then Ardarius Washington on the PUP. So I went 52 of 53. My one was I had John Jenkins off, and I had Jalen Armour Davis on. That seems to be the shock for everyone, Sam. How much of a shock was it to you? Because I thought he played well enough in the preseason to earn a spot. The Ravens, though, clearly, I guess, didn't see it that way.
Well, I knew going in, there was no way the Ravens were going to keep 5 inside linebackers and 7 corners. I mentioned that on the show. That's just too much on the defensive side of the ball. But I was shocked. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm very shocked. I'm still not quite over it, considering all the film that I saw showing the Jalen Armour Davis. And we know how big of a fan I am of Jalen Armour Davis as well. So all of that was very shocking to see. Health is the name of the game for Jalen Armour Davis. Is one of the reasons why he was yet to live up to his potential that we were waiting to see. But he was finally healthy, finally contributing, finally practicing on a daily basis, and he still got cut. So that's a shame for Jalen Armour Davis. Obviously, a lot can happen between the cut date and the time in which teams can claim players off of waivers. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's definitely a shock for the majority of the fan base, because we saw exactly what the Ravens saw when they drafted him out of Alabama, and that's a 6'1", 4.3 speed corner that can do it all. So very, very interesting, the reason why they did it. I get it. You know, again, this is an airtight roster. I mean, there is no room for any error here. So I see why the Ravens did it the way they did. I understand it, but pretty shocking all the same.
You made the point there. And first of all, we'll give you a little moment of silence for Jalen Armour Davis here, as I know that he was your guy. I think the Ravens said, look, Sam, we can't keep all your guys. We gotta make it so that you don't get everything here. But you're right. It's like we've been kind of building up to this with Jalen Armour Davis. It's like the potential's there. It's there. Oh no, he's injured. He'll come back and we'll realize that potential next year. And then we finally get a glimpse. And all of a sudden it's like, oh no, he's gone. See you later. And that's like, oh, come on. We just saw it. What are you doing? But
exactly.
You know, the more I look at the roster, Sam, and I kind of talked about it. We did an instant reaction last night to the news once it dropped. The more I look at it, the more I do think that the way this roster turned out was pretty perfect. And again, not that the Jalen Armour Davis news wasn't shocking, because it was to me, but keeping 6 corners gives you, I think, a pretty good order of operations in terms of the corner room, where you're going to have Marlon Humphrey and Keon Martin as your slot guys. Marlon, obviously the clear starter, with Keon Martin being able to spell him when needed. And then you have 2 starting outside corners in Jaire Alexander and Nate Wiggins, and then 2 backups in Chidobe Awuzie and TJ Tampa. And again, you can rotate in Awuzie on certain plays, and obviously you can kick Marlon outside when you need to. Like, there are a lot of versatility options there. But I think the big wins for the Ravens were keeping Ruben Lowry, Keon Martin, and Jay Higgins. Those 3, I think, were really important to be able to find spots for. The Ravens did that. And, you know, the thing about JAD was that also, like, you heard Zach Orr talking about him with glowing remarks and, you know, calling him super smart and instinctual. And like we heard what this coaching staff felt about him. We saw the production, but in my opinion, like, a lot of these moves were in front of our faces, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. But the way that I see it, it's like Jalen Armour Davis is not going to necessarily make or break the Ravens' Super Bowl chances. Not that any of the undrafted guys are either, but I think at this point, I like what the Ravens did. And I think that if, you know, they had a conversation with John Jenkins, they had a conversation with some of these vets about, hey, we're going to keep you on the roster. I mean, there was guaranteed money thrown John Jenkins' way. I mean, that to me, I think, is probably what happened there. That's why I kept JAD over John Jenkins. Was like, okay, I think JAD proved it. Jenkins, you can maybe work something out. But now that that information's out there, and that at least I realized that information, I think it probably couldn't have gone better for the Ravens. Their roster is looking really good.
It's really good. And all kidding aside, I know Jalen Armour Davis, you know, it's a phenomenal corner, in my opinion, at least talent-wise. He's really good. But again, you mentioned it very clearly. The Ravens have now a backup slot guy. They didn't really have it. So Keon Martin was just an excellent piece. Not only is he available to be the backup slot guy in case Marlon Humphrey needs a spell or is injured, but he's also very good on special teams. So that makes a lot of sense. Then you have the 2 corners and then the backup corners in that regard as well. I think the Ravens would love to have some more depth at boundary corner, especially given the injury history of Chidobe Awuzie and Jaire Alexander. So I'm hoping, I think they're hoping that for whatever reason, Jalen Armour Davis makes it to the practice squad, because that is a depth piece that is very valuable to them. But yeah, this roster is as perfect can be. And shout outs to not only Eric DeCosta, but Marcus Zevedo, who's the director of player personnel for the Ravens, who continues to find ways to get. He's responsible for the undrafted free agents that come in for the Ravens. So he continues to do excellent work. I mean, 3 undrafted free agents coming in on a roster that was already built as the best in the league is substantial. I mean, it's such a great thing to accomplish. And, I think that, he deserves kudos as well. So, but yeah, this roster is perfect, airtight. Hopefully they stay healthy throughout the season because it's looking like a championship caliber roster for sure, top to bottom.
Yeah, it just feels like everything falls into place on that roster 1 through 53. And not that Armour Davis being on the roster would have just messed everything up. I mean, it wouldn't. If you get corner depth, and it would have been fine. But like I said, the order of operations is pretty clear there. It's pretty clear for the entire roster. And, I agree with you. 3 undrafted rookies making a roster like that, it shows how well they played, how much the Ravens value them. And someone in the live chat last night mentioned this. Jaire probably pushed J.E.D. out of a spot. It is what it is. And now obviously you'd rather have Jaire as opposed to Jalen Armour Davis, but I know that wasn't necessarily an expected addition to the roster in April. So, it kind of switched things up, but I think it will be to the Ravens' benefit. What will also be to the Ravens' benefit is if they're able to get some of these guys back on their practice squad. So coming up, Sam and I, we're going to talk about who potentially is going to be on this practice squad and how it could impact potential game day call-ups and a lot more. So stay tuned. A lot coming up on Locked On Ravens. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. The NFL season is right around the corner, and you can feel the buzz. Fantasy football season is here, and everyone's researching, drafting, and building their championship squads. If you haven't joined the league yet, now's the time, and it's all happening on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, I'm playing fantasy football on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran creating your millionth league. Yahoo Fantasy is loaded with fun ways to compete and brand new features that make the game even better. With season kickoff on September 4th, now's the time to start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football, which offers so many fun ways to compete. Want more ways to play? Try the brand new Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine League mode, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated weekly until one team is left standing. Want to play instantly with friends? Try the new Draft with Friends mode. For the classics, get your crew together and go head-to-head in a private league. No crew, no problem. Join a public league, the easiest way to play. The NFL season kicks off September 4th, so don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher, Sam Njoku, still diving into this Ravens content and coverage with you. Again, appreciate everybody for being here. We're a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast, Monday through Friday. Of course, that regular show comes out at 6 a.m. Eastern time. We also have the Locked On Ravens Squad show, which Sam and I are both a part of. It's us and then former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail. That is on Mondays and Thursdays. But during the season, we're going to have a game day post-game reaction show. Be sure to check out that. I am also going to have instant reactions. We have Locked On Ravens watch along. So if you want daily Ravens coverage, we have a lot of content here on Locked On Ravens. But Sam, let's try to build this practice squad. I did this on the live last night, and we had a lot of people chime in with guys, at least. And I was just doing it based off of who got cut. And I exceeded that 17 player limit. And I say 17 because there is opportunity for an international player slot here that is able to make the Ravens go above the limit of 16. So what I ended up coming up with, and this really isn't that complete of a thing right now. This is just my initial thing that we made with the chat. I have, ideally, in a perfect world, no one gets claimed. Jalen Armour Davis, CJ Okoye, CJ Ravenel, Devin Leary, or Tyler Huntley, or another quarterback. Just one quarterback on the practice squad. Yeah. I know when you say Devin Leary, it gets a little controversial. So could be another guy. Then it's Bo Braid, Brent Urban, Dellinger, Dalcourt, Lichtenhan on the offensive line, Scotty Washington, Chandler Martin, Malik Ham, Anthony Miller, Keith Kirkwood, Malik Cunningham, Myles Gaskin, and Lucas Scott. Now, out of these guys I actually took off Nick Semek for Dalcourt, and I put Lichtenhan on there because apparently the Ravens want him back. So I was just going based off what I saw. Yeah. Who else didn't I have? I didn't have. Well, I know the Dayton Wade and the Guillory situations, they're just going to be injured. So that I didn't factor them into this equation at the wide receiver spot. D'Ernest Johnson I didn't put on here. And there were a few others. But is that list pretty sound if we're talking just Ravens? Or is there anybody else you'd add or take off?
Very sound. I think that's actually perfect from what I have. Also, watch out for Kadir Ismail. He was recently released by the Raiders. He's a guy that could potentially be coming up over here. If in fact, because we don't know, it looks like Isaiah Likely is going to be good to go. He's looking. I mean, we saw photos of him mossing kids in the playground or the field or whatever, and it looks like he was getting bear hugged by the players during practice on Monday and Tuesday. So, I think it's a good shot. If he doesn't play week 1, then definitely week 2. Wasn't put on the IR, so it looks like he's going to stay on the roster. But it'd be good to have some insurance. And I think Kadir Ismail might be a little better than who they currently have on there. But I think we'll see what happens with that. But other than that, perfect list. I think that pretty much encapsulates what the Ravens will need to do in order to be prepped for the 2025 season.
And that Likely point is one I actually wanted to talk about, because I think the Ravens gave a pretty big hint here on Likely's status with him not going on injured reserve and keeping him on the roster. Obviously, if he were to go on injured reserve, he would have had to miss those first 4 games. Clearly, with him not being put on there, they feel confident, it feels like, that he'll be back before then. I'm not sure that means week 1. I still think that's probably a little bit of a stretch. Who knows? I mean, I'm not a doctor, so, I'm not going to go out here and tell you, oh, this timeline, that time. Q is a better person to ask all the timeline questions, but he's not here with us today. My sweet spot still probably week 3 for him, but I think the Ravens, again, that big hint, it's a really good sign that he's not on injured reserve right now, and he made that roster.
Yeah, it's very good for the Ravens. We talked about this on the show. The Ravens do need 3 tight ends, and Charlie Kolar, I should say, is really, really, really good. Very underrated tight end. So they won't miss a beat on the 2 tight end sets, but 3 tight ends, they might have to have Patrick Ricard there more. I think the Ravens are going to be fine until week 3. If he doesn't play week 1, you could definitely hold him off in the Browns game and then get him ready for that week 3 matchup, which is going to be huge for the Ravens moving forward.
Yeah, and I think that while Likely and Kohler give you a little different skill sets, and, it's something where Likely can't do all the things Kohler does and Kohler can't do all the things Likely does, I think that they can get by for a couple of weeks without Likely, like you said. And again, if you're Isaiah Likely, and Q has talked about this and he's made this point, and honestly, it's a good one. If you're Isaiah Likely, you should not rush yourself back here. Like, I understand, stats and getting the production, but, there's no winning. And if the Ravens are trying to, his answer should be, hey, I want to, and not that they would. I know that they generally are very cautious with their timelines, especially after the J.K. Dobbins thing. But
exactly,
again, I think they're aligned in their view here, where it's like, we want to get you back as close to 100% as we can. And so if he's like 85% going into week 2 against Cleveland, I would just say we're going to try to sneak this thing out without you and get you back in week 3 when maybe you're 90, 95, 99%. That to me is probably what would you do? Would you want him back against Cleveland, or would you want to hold him out till week 3?
Hold him out until he's 100%. We're going to need him for the postseason. I would be very surprised if they try and rush him out, especially, first game of the season, even though, it's the Bills and there's postseason implications, there's not much win for them. And, you love to have 2 tight ends, because there's definitely, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, in the coming days as we get closer to week 1, but there are definitely holes in the Bills' defense, especially up the middle, where tight ends flourish. But you got DeAndre Hopkins now, who can do very similar things as a receiver. So there's really not much, rush to push him out there. Get him ready as much as you can until the season, winds down a little bit. As we get closer and closer to week 3, week 4, get him ready to go and have him fully prepared to get to the rest of the season, because we're going to need him in the postseason.
Yeah, and John Harbaugh gave the updates on Monday, where essentially he expects everyone who is not practicing currently to be practicing next week. But of course, you mentioned Isaiah Likely's status is a little more up in the air than that, which makes sense. That timeline generally is 4 to 8 weeks. Again, I'm not a doctor, so don't quote me on any of this. I'm just, Q has mentioned it to us, and, obviously I did my preliminary research, but of course, me actually breaking my foot a couple times, I understand a little bit about what goes into it. Although, if Isaiah Likely needs my foot fully healed twice, I can give it to him, and he can go out there week 1 and he can perform. So I'm willing to make that sacrifice for the Ravens. All right, I'm willing to do it. Isaiah just has to hit my phone, and we'll make it happen. But I think, to me, the big thing with how the roster looks right now is you just see top to bottom, and I said this on the short I did. It's not just the star power. It's not just the depth. It's the depth's depth that also it's just like layers on layers on
Yeah.
layers. And that's what, to me, and we've had this conversation. I know you and I, Sam, and you and Q and I have had it on the squad show. It's like a roster with stars is awesome, right? That it's great. But if you have no depth behind those stars, you're putting yourself at risk, especially when injuries hit or slumps happen and you can't have a reliable guy you can turn to. And we've seen too many Ravens seasons end with health-related issues. Now, of course, if Lamar Jackson, and knock on wood, it doesn't happen, obviously, but if he were to go down and miss a lot of time or the season, I think is the big one there. We all know what that means for the Ravens this season.
Yeah.
You know, if Lamar's not there helping you fight for the playoffs and he's out for the year, it's over. But anyone other than Lamar, not that there wouldn't be a downgrade, but you feel good about the depth that you have behind these guys, that there are not only just replacement level players, there are quality players that you can throw in there. And that's when you look up and down. And it's not only like, oh, this guy, you know, the Ravens have 5 first-round picks in their secondary. Like, no, they have an unreal amount of talent. And that goes all the way down to those 3 undrafted guys that, again, I shout them out every time I can because they worked hard. They earned the opportunity. And we've said it. They made the Ravens make a tough decision.
Yeah.
I'm sure coming into this offseason, they weren't expecting to cut Jalen Armour-Davis for an undrafted guy who wasn't even on their initial 53, or not the 53, but on the initial rookie minicamp list. Like, Keon Martin earned that. Ruben Lowry earned that. Jay Higgins earned that. And, I mean, what does it say about them, Sam, that they're able to go out there and make this roster and, I mean, go out there and show that they were deserving of it?
Keon Martin especially. I mean, is he even on the excuse me? Is he even on the roster in training camp if he doesn't succeed during those tryouts? I mean, that's an insane story for him, especially going into a unit that we've talked about before. We even knew how to say his name. That was the best cornerback group in all of football. To infuse yourself into that roster with your sheer talent and will, that is very impressive. We talked about Jay Higgins. We knew after the week 2 game against the Dallas Cowboys that he was a shoo-in to be. I know we were trying to find the logistics of how we can make it work roster-wise, but we knew there was no way the Ravens could get rid of Jay Higgins. And, of course, Ruben Lowry's, I mean, crazy talent. Undrafted free agents. To the point we're asking ourselves, how did these guys get undrafted, especially guys like Jay Higgins who had all those accolades. And it's just very impressive. Shout out to those 3 guys. I know they worked their butts off going in there. I've had family who, you know, has been undrafted free agents going into training camp for the Ravens, by the way. And, you know, they made it as a practice squad guys, never made it to the full roster, but just making it as a full roster guy is a huge accomplishment. So congratulations to those guys. They deserve it. It's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, hey, even making it to the practice squad is a huge accomplishment. Like, you know, this is what these guys have worked for practically their whole lives in some cases. You know, it's like a guy like CJ Okoye who kind of started playing football a little later, and others who have played football. I know for guys like Odafe Owe, David Ajabo, who again started playing football a little later in their lives. Like, still, like it's what they work for. It's what they put their blood, sweat, and tears in to do. And you know, it's crazy because for a guy like Jay, and I have the receipts, by the way, on guys like Jay Higgins and Aeneas Peebles were 2 of my late round draft crushes. And I mean, I know I've told the story about Peebles before where every round outside of like 4th round on, I was like, please, this pick has to be Peebles. He's not going to last long. Like, please get him. And then he somehow drops it. And I thank the other 31 teams for passing on him as many times as they did.
Psychos.
The same thing with Jay Higgins. I mean, again, Higgins was kind of the combine. I know you had Chase on your show talking about that with the combine and just how, you know, the Ravens have benefited so much from just botched, and I say botched in quotation marks because I don't really believe they're botched combines. Kyle Hamilton, thank you very much. Orlando Brown Jr., thank you very much. Like, you know, it's just, you have teams put a lot into the combine, and it deprives them of the opportunity to add players like a Jay Higgins, a Kyle Hamilton, and Orlando Brown Jr., who go out there and make a name for themselves. It goes beyond that. I don't care if a guy can run in a straight line fast for 40 yards. Go out there and make the play at game speed. That'll tell me more about you. So that, for a guy like Higgins and obviously Lowry and Martin, you know, I feel awesome for those guys. I honestly feel really proud of them. And there was a stat here from Sablitz34 on Twitter. I don't know if you saw this, Sam, but the Ravens, they, in terms of homegrown talent, he put together a list of, and he put arrows next to every player's name that was either drafted by the Ravens or signed as an undrafted rookie by the Ravens. 43 of 53 players on their roster were signed as an undrafted rookie or drafted. That's 81%. That has to be the highest in the league, right?
I'm about to say, maybe the Eagles creep there, perhaps.
Maybe.
That is an impressive number. That's insane.
It's unreal. What is it? 21 of the last 22 years, the Ravens have had an undrafted rookie, at least one of them on their roster. So it's the identification, the process. John Harbaugh talked about it. You shouted out guys as well. It's not just Acosta. It's everybody in that organization. But of course, if you're watching or listening to this after the practice squad or the waivers are announced, you can tell Sam and I how right or wrong we were about our practice squad predictions that we did a little earlier in that second segment. But coming up in the final part of the show, are there any other spots that could potentially hold a veteran? Could they maybe move on from a guy, replace him with a veteran? What are the names that are out there? Stay tuned. We got a lot coming up on the show. First, the show was brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel's making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. You got player props, building same-game parlays, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. Plus, it makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. And look, for the Ravens this season, there's going to be a lot of energy, right? Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, the whole 9 yards with that offense. FanDuel, it's going to add a little bit of spice to those games on top of an already spicy game that I think the Ravens are going to have a lot of this season. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Moving right along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher with Sam Njoku. We're talking Ravens football. And of course, we have so much content coming our way on a daily basis, and we'll be live, whenever, like we did last night, whenever there's a big piece of news, whenever there is a game, we'll have all the game day coverage. And it's like 5 straight hours of content here, including the squad show, instant reactions, watch alongs. We got it all here. We're actually right now, as we're recording this, 6 subscribers away from 14,000. So the goal was 14,000 before the season. I'm going to just go out on a limb and say we're probably going to get it. Not confirmed yet. Obviously, we still got to get the 6. And don't unsubscribe now that I said that, by the way. But the sport's incredible. I really do appreciate that and everything that we've built up here on Locked On Ravens. Tell a friend, tell the family member if they want some daily Ravens coverage. We're here for them just like we're here for you on Locked On Ravens. But Sam, since Q's not here, we can talk about some speculation. All right. I know Q doesn't like it. We're going to do it. And then I'm probably going to do it with him again when he comes on next. But I want to do it with you because as these rosters take shape, as the practice squads obviously get filled out and formed, these teams aren't done. There are still additions to be had. There are still names that can be signed. To me, I think the intriguing thing with the Ravens and Eric Acosta is they truly never stop trying to find ways to make the team better. And, John Harbaugh kind of talked about it during his Monday availability. He's like, we're not necessarily scouring right now, but, the guys and Eric and all them, they're looking. They're going to see if there's anybody that can help the team improve. There's not a lot of space on this roster. When you're cutting guys like Jalen Davis and, the whole 9 yards there, what does that mean? Well, it means you have a pretty good roster, not a lot of guys you would move on from. Is there any scenario that you could see? Because there are some veterans out there. We saw some guys get cut. Obviously, I think the one that everybody is looking at right now, not going to be a shock. It's obviously bringing back Deontay Johnson. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, man.
See, that was the name. I saw you nodding along.
You crazy.
I'm just kidding. Deontay got cut by the Browns, but he's not coming back to Baltimore.
No way.
It's obviously Jadeveon Clowney. That's the one. That's the real one everybody's talking about. But do you think that there's any shot? I mean, the Ravens, they kept David Ojabo. Adisa Isaac's going to be back at some point. I feel like the 1-for-1 move would be Ojabo for Isaac when he gets back. Is there any shot that like a Za'Darius could come in, a Clowney could come in, any vet could come in? Or do you think they're pretty set with what they have?
I think they'll take a gander. I mean, he's the fifth pass rusher. They'll be paying close attention to how he performs in given spots. If they call him his number and he doesn't perform or he doesn't show as much as they would like, I could see a a scenario where they bring in a Zadarius or they bring in a Jadeveon Clowney. Now, will those guys want to be the fifth pass rusher on this team? I don't know. They probably want to play a little more, get a little more opportunities. So it remains to be seen what they think about it. Interesting that they haven't signed with the team yet. So that tells me something that maybe they're waiting for the right situation. I don't know if that will be it for them, but I don't think David Ojabo has it locked by any stretch of the imagination. It's similar to Jalen Armour-Davis, who, by the way, prior to training camp, we thought that this was his last chance. We would have been surprised if he had made the roster based on what we were hearing prior to the start of training camp. So similar to David Ojabo, I think this is a case where Adisa Isaac's injury kept him in the spot where he's in right now. But if Isaac comes back or if his play isn't up to par, I could definitely see a veteran coming in and taking that spot.
That's a really good point, actually. And it brings me back to episodes we were doing and I was doing before training camp where I made it very clear JED was not on my final roster at that point. And, credit to him because I think that truly he worked hard and he earned it, in my opinion. Obviously, didn't work out for him that way. But, yeah, at this point, Ojabo, it might just be a game day inactive every week. Like, it just feels like that could be what it is for him. Yeah. Because they're going to have to make some guys inactive. You can't keep all those 53 guys active. Exactly. So I feel like Ojabo probably is on that list. Offensive line wise, and you talked about Ben Cleveland a little bit. There were a couple of higher profile names that were cut. Cole Strange, former first round pick of the Patriots. Also, actually, there's a clip of him getting sunned by Travis Jones at the Senior Bowl from when they were entering the league together. Well, Collins got cut by Dallas. He didn't play last year, but I think he's trying to make a comeback there. I'm not saying Cleveland specifically, but I kind of am saying Cleveland specifically because I don't really see anybody else who gets cut there. Yeah. Do you think that there could be a swap at some point between the Ravens and free agency? Would they send Cleveland out and bring another guy in?
Seems like it's a case of if he doesn't practice hard, then yeah, I think he is not safe by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, there's a case that can be made that should the Ravens have even signed him, based on everything that went down. I mean, they got him for dirt cheap. I mean, literally dirt cheap. So there is something to be said about, affording somebody to come in. And Ben Cleveland knows the system. We talk about familiarity, especially at this time of the year where you get into the season. You don't want to spend all that time getting acclimated to the offense. So Ben Cleveland is the commodity. Right now, he is the backup guard. So if Voorhees were to go down or Faalele were to go down, at least as of now, he would be the guy to come in and step up. So he is in a pretty decent spot for now. Makes it more interesting to see what the Ravens could do. So to answer your question, yes, I do see a scenario where that could happen, but I think it's least likely than the David Ojabo situation.
Tony Jefferson's another intriguing one, maybe just as a practice squad guy. Obviously, he got cut by Los Angeles. He's made a comeback, and he's honestly done a really good job. I think a lot better than a lot of people expected him to. We know he has love for Baltimore. I don't know his situation right now, what he wants to do. A vet or two on the practice squad from outside the organization. I don't think that hurt anybody.
I don't think so either. Very interesting to see if Bo Braid gets snatched up by somebody for whatever reason. The Ravens have a gluttony of box safeties, and that's what Tony Jefferson plays. And one of the reasons why Ruben Lowry got the job is because he's one of the few free safeties that the Ravens have. So I think there's a chance. I don't know if he wants to stay where he's at currently. I think they'll bring him back to the practice squad over there. But if not, certainly a spot for him here, potentially.
Yeah, it's possible. And look, we'll have all the updates on everything that's going on with the practice squad as the Ravens fill that out. Obviously, waivers will pass at 12 Eastern time, 12 noon. And then from there, teams can start to fill out their practice squad. So a lot of decisions still to be made, a lot of names still to be signed. And of course, it's always exciting to go through these. It's really a whirlwind. It's just like a few days of everybody on the move, getting signed, moving teams. Yeah. So and then before we know it, almost a week away from the start of the regular season. So I'm pumped. Sam, I appreciate you hopping on. Thank you for joining me. Before I get you out of here, tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Yeah, you can find me at Ravenstalk Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and as well as TikTok. We're setting it up on TikTok a little bit, getting things going there. So make sure to check us out there. Also find our podcast on YouTube. We come out with an episode once a week, talking all things Ravens. And also, we are at the Raven Squad Show twice a week, talking Ravens football with Kevin over there, as well as Q, getting ready for the season. Very pumped up. Next time we're here, we're talking Bills, baby. So I'm very excited to get things going. We're just a few more little incremental transactions away from that. So very excited to get things started. So look forward to that.
Man, doesn't even feel real. And
know.
next time we're talking, maybe Deontay Johnson's on the Ravens. And
No.
again, and we can make an episode about that. Yeah, what a plot twist that would be. But Sam, I appreciate you. Thank you. And again, all the links to Sam's work in the description down below. Be sure to check him out and support what he does. Appreciate you, Sam. Appreciate everybody who tuned in today, watched, listened to Locked On Ravens on the way out. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form for that 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens content and coverage. And of course, we'll be right back here tomorrow talking more Ravens football. So be sure to stay tuned. And I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.